So, quick question for you. You make a great point with the high ROI. What do you think is a successful ROI metric for Metasearch? Or at your time at Wyndham, what benchmarks were like, okay, this is ideally where we want to be? Obviously, knowing it fluctuates, but what's the ideal sweet spot, would you say?
Yeah, you bet. And that's a great question. Actually, in fact, we'll talk about goals here a little bit later on, but just in terms of finding that sweet spot where I can get the most volume for the best return, I'm usually looking for an ROI somewhere between about a 7 to a 9 to 1 return. There's going to be a lot of variables that play into that, which we'll talk about, of course, but that's usually about the sweet spot.
Okay, no, I think, that makes a ton of sense. I think this actually sets up a really great follow-up question or a great segue for us. When you think of Meta, I know there are a lot of hotel management companies that say, Metasearch is really just a channel shift. But there is a really good argument to be out there that, Metasearch can actually be a part of customer acquisition. So when you think of Meta, or when hotels think of Metasearch, which one is it? Can you break that down for me a little bit more, or how you approach it?
Yeah, it can be a little bit of both. And ultimately, it's a part of your direct booking strategy. And especially right now in this day and age with COVID being what it is, direct bookings are more important than ever because that gives you that opportunity to really control your narrative, to own that guest and have all communications with them be under your control. So if you happen to have to close your hotel next month, knock on wood, we hope that doesn't happen. But if it does, do you want to be the one contacting your guest, or do you want one of the OTAs to be the one contacting your guests? Well, you want to do it, right? So direct bookings are ever more important. But when we start talking about the channel shift part of that, we have to, again, think about it in terms of really a comparison of our branded search terms, right? So in this example here that we were talking about, we had a branded search term. Somebody was looking for that property by name, all right? So that person's already looking for your hotel, and yet we've said how important it was to own those branded search terms. Well, there are also non-branded search terms. And so this is one of the myths that we see in the industry is that Meta only provides channel shift and doesn't attract new business, but there are ways to actually attract new business for searches like hotels in New York. And we'll take, for example, Google promoted ads. They used to call it promoted hotels. Now they just call it promoted ads. So this is an example of hotels in New York, 434 hotels. And we see the Crown Plaza we're in New Orleans. I switched cities. Crown Plaza New Orleans coming at the top of that list, followed by the Holiday Inn. And I highlighted in both of those are ads, right? And so in this example, they've paid an extra cost per click to get that market ranking, so they came up at the top of that list. Now, just like a non-branded search term, this is going to have a higher cost per click. It's also going to have a different return on your ad spend because now in this example, they weren't looking specifically for you. It is a new guest acquisition. It will have a lower conversion rate, but now you are getting more exposure. And this doesn't apply just to Google. I can say the same thing on TripAdvisor. So when we look on TripAdvisor, they have TripAdvisor sponsored placements. And then even if I go into Trivago, they don't have a sponsored placements equivalent, but you'll see a little window on Trivago that specifically tells you the ranking results reflect not just your search criteria, but also the compensation paid by the booking site. What that means is that if you want to bid high enough CPC on your Metasearch points of sale on that campaign, you can actually impact your market ranking if that's what you want to do. And of course, a lot of that is about setting goals.